I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network. Here today with me is Howard Klein, founder of RK Equity and author of Lithium-ion Bull newsletter. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. This is our first time speaking, so I want to start by asking you about yourself. As I mentioned, you're founder of RK Equity and you have your own lithium newsletter. Tell me a little bit about your background in the lithium space.
So RK Equity has been in business for about 15 years. I started work in this industry, in the junior mining industry, with Robert Friedland and the original Ivanhoe mines in Mongolia. And about 7 years after that, about 9 years ago, I represented Western Lithium, which is a Nevada asset, which is now owned by Lithium Americas. So I've been representing junior mining companies for a long time and heavily focused on the lithium space, in particular in the last 2 years, but as far back as 8 years ago.
So your lithium newsletter has a different tone than many other publications. You have song lyrics and pop culture references and that kind of thing. What made you decide to go that route, and what's been the response from your readers?
The Lithium Bull has evolved a great deal over the course of 2 years. I've formally written it as the newsletter only for about 15 months, but it was all part of just educating my investor base about lithium, and then I just started one by one throwing in some ideas, and I just started thinking of lithium narratives, and I'm a big classic rock music fan, and so I started with it, and then people liked it, so I started using it more, and the response has been actually very good in terms of the writing style, apart from the references, but just the actual writing. It's infotainment, I call it, but I try to make it very informative, but at the same time easier and not dry to read, as many other traditional research publications sometimes can be.
Sure. So we're here at Minds and Money in New York, and you were just on a panel discussing lithium. I believe one of the questions addressed was whether it's too late to invest. What are your thoughts on that?
It's early. It's definitely not too late. So, yes, finally, at the end of last year, there was a re-rating of sorts for an industry that was extremely undervalued and not well understood. Since the beginning of the year, there's been a big sell-off, half of which was because of lithium disinformation or change of policy in Chile, and the other half has just been a general volatility in the market as interest rates have been rising and political events have made things like Bitcoin or cannabis stocks, fall, and lithium has fallen within that. So within that shakeout has actually given an opportunity. I wrote about it in today's newsletter. I called it Twice in a Lifetime. The Talking Heads Once in a Lifetime is an opportunity for those who missed it last year to kind of come back, but you still have to be selective and understand which are the highest quality companies and projects and enter at the right price.
Maybe you could tell me a little bit about the criteria that you use when you're looking at lithium stocks.
I have KISS principles, so keep it simple, stupid, but also KISS, the rock band, and on that are quality of asset. Hard rock is easier than brines. Brines is easier than clay or some other asset. If you don't require innovative technologies to make it economic, so that's very important. Jurisdiction, right? America is better than Africa in most instances, or Western Australia, and Canada. So management, track record, quality assets, ability to finance are among the key criteria.
Any stocks you would mention in particular that you think are doing it well?
Yeah, I think, look, lithium is a critical mineral in the United States, and there's only 2% of all of production of lithium comes from the United States. So I like some U.S. assets, and in particular, U.S. listed assets. And there's a shortage of them because they're mostly in Australia and Canada. So I like Lithium Americas very much, and I like Piedmont Lithium, which just has been on NASDAQ now for one day, right? So this is easily tradable with a relatively high stock price in North Carolina. Lithium Americas is obviously partnered with Ganfeng and SQM and has a second asset, in Nevada that is going to be very interesting. So I like those two stocks very much, and I'm invested in both.
Taking you back to the market a little bit, you talked about how it's early days, it's a good time to invest. What can you tell me about the oversupply concerns that we saw coming into play earlier this year?
Yeah, the oversupply fears were part of this disinformation, which I said was half of the reason that the stocks have fallen. So it's not easy to turn on supply of lithium. It takes 4 to 5 years, and most of the companies that currently produce lithium did not invest until very recently in that supply. So I think it's very overblown. Lithium in the ground is not rare, but the skills to produce lithium are quite rare, and permitting and other issues. So demand also is rising so much faster than supply can keep up. I've never experienced in my 15 years in the resource space any material that is forecast to grow 4 to 5 times within the next 7 years. Even the iron ore boom of, which was 10 years, was only about a doubling or a 2.5 times increase from a very large base. But it's very difficult when you're growing that fast to have supply catch up. So it's economics 101. Demand is outpacing supply, therefore prices are going to remain high for quite some time, in particular for lithium carbonate and hydroxide. The spodumene market, which not a lot of people talk about as separate and distinct from the carbonate and hydroxide market, I do believe you may see some oversupply of that because the conversion of the spodumene supply is not keeping pace with the prospective production of the spodumene supply. That's a 2020-2021 consideration for spodumene, so I'm a little bit cautious on prospective prices of spodumene, but I'm with a high degree of confidence thinking that carbonate and hydroxide prices will remain at or above current levels for the next 5 to 7 years.
In your newsletter, you're always encouraging your readers to do their own research, and we've talked about how there's a lot of disinformation in the market right now. If you're an investor, you're new to the space, where should you start? What should you be doing to educate yourself?
What's interesting in this market, because it's such a small industry, it's not a very big business for most of the traditional investment banks to allocate a lot of time to. So they have written research, but it's often of very low quality relative to what they might have written elsewhere. So there's a bit of a cottage industry of industry professionals who have been around. A lot of them are on social media. The Lithium Bull and our newsletter is a place to start. But I also reference a lot of other good resources out there, which are readily available and visible. To anyone who wants to get educated about this space, I would encourage them to go on Twitter, go on social media and LinkedIn, and you'll very quickly find some people who are providing for free, a lot of good information. And analyze the companies themselves and their, Albemarle, SQM, Mineral Resources, Orocobre are putting a lot of information into the market through their quarterly conference calls and transcripts. But you also need to look through their messaging because everyone has their own slant on things.
Any final points or pieces of advice for lithium investors in 2018?
Keep investing, keep looking at the market. Things are undervalued, but this is a 15 to 20 year secular investment thematic. So you have time. Don't ever think that you've missed it or that you've seen it all before, because this is not uranium, this is not rare earths, this is not copper. Just view it on the specific fundamentals of the lithium business and what's driving it, which is China, which is the electric vehicles and energy storage. So get smart on all of those demand drivers and then look at the individual companies that are well placed to profitably produce and generate cash flow and are not currently expensive, for those forecasted cash flow.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That was great. Once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and this is Howard Klein.